Hello everybody. Thank you for your interest in this video. I'm James Leichter, President of Aptora and majority shareholder at RA Tax and Accounting. I just wanted to let you know this video was produced during our regular weekly software training conducted for the staff at Aptora and RA Tax and Accounting. It really wasn't designed to be a Hollywood production. It is definitely not a sales pitch of any kind. It's not an overview. Every week, I conduct training. It lasts about an hour for all of the employees at Aptora and RA Tax and Accounting. We decided to record this one and make it available to you. It's not a sales presentation. It's not an overview. We typically pick one topic, sometimes two, and we dig deep into that topic and talk about all the details of that particular subject. So I hope you find it useful, and let us know if you have any feedback. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this company webinar, company training. I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about item reservations, which is a very common topic of discussion in the tech support department. People call all the time and ask about item reservations. Our trainers often cover item reservations with contractors, and they're really surprised the feature exists. And they're amazed on what it can do for them and bring to them the next level of accounting. So let's get started. Let me clear some space here. Item reservations is a feature that needs to be turned on. So you do want to go to Preferences and turn it on. You can do that by clicking the Preferences button here, or you can go to Edit Preferences. It takes you to the same place. Where we want to be is Items and Company Preferences. To get to Company Preferences, you do have to have permission to get to Company Preferences. You either need to log in as the admin or somebody gave you permissions to get here. The item reservation feature is turned on here by checking that box. When you do that, certain buttons and fields will become available that you didn't see otherwise. If you want to reserve items, that is typically done from this menu here, Item Reservation List. But you can reserve items in different forms throughout the software. For example, this form here, the item reservation form, can also be opened from other forms such as work orders, item receipts, bills, credit card charges. So it's possible to reserve these items elsewhere, but this is how you could do it from scratch. Now, if you've been using Total Office Manager for a while, you know that there's usually a start from scratch way of doing things like this. And then there is the flow. We always talk about the flow of the software, where you typically can do something from something else. So for example, if you do item reservations from a work order or from an item receipt, it might save you steps because it'll pre-populate this form. Before I get into using this form, I want to cover some of the accounting aspects of this real quick. When you turn the item reservation feature on, it's important to note that the system will create a new chart of account for you, and it is called Work in Progress. This is created for you, and you cannot delete it. You can inactivate it if you'd like, but you can't delete it. It'll tell you down here that it was created by Total Office Manager. What you might want to do, however, is change the number. Most of us have a numbering system for our chart of accounts, and WIP is probably not an appropriate number for an other current asset, but that's the number we put in there to get you started, and then you would change that to your number. if you have a numbering convention, and I would recommend you do. So in other words, other current assets would always start with a certain set of numbers, cost of goods sold, a certain set of numbers, etc. You can change the name if you want, but chances are you don't need to. The idea behind work in progress, or pardon me, the idea behind item reservations rather, is to help you with work in progress. If you're interested in work in progress, you can search the support site, support.aptora.com, to learn more. The idea behind work in progress is to allow you to recognize costs of goods sold and income, depending on how you set it up, before you create an invoice. So many companies want to recognize costs of goods sold as they do the work, even though they haven't invoiced anyone yet. And it's also possible to recognize income before the job's finished as well. But typically, what companies want to do using the work in progress system is to recognize costs of goods sold as the job progresses. That's work in progress. Now, there's a little more to it. I'm oversimplifying it, and you can learn more at our website. And in fact, you can search work in progress on the internet, and you'll find more than you may want to know about the topic. But it's important to understand work in progress if you want to get to the next level of accounting. All right, so with that in mind, let's get into the work in progress and do an example. I'm going to close the item reservation list. I'm not going to create one here. I want to create one elsewhere. And I think I'll do it by first creating an item. Now, the only item types that you can reserve are inventory parts and serialized items. Those are the only ones that you can reserve. Let's go ahead and reserve a serialized item. So I'm going to type in WIP serialized test, and we'll give it a description real quick. And then we will go over to the inventory tab, and you might remember we can actually put one in here right there. So we could actually add one here, and we can assign it to a warehouse. We can put in a cost. So if we were setting up a serialized item for the first time, we could put that in here. But I'm not going to do that because we're going to go through the process of ordering it and so forth. Now, my accounting tab, I might as well take care of that. Since we're recording this, we want to do it right. This is a serialized piece of equipment, so the income account is equipment, and the COGS account needs to be equipment. And the asset account will be inventory. That was the default. And all that looks good. I'll hit save and close. Now it's asking me, do you really want an item cost of 0? Remember, that's estimated cost. And I might say, no, actually I don't. Thanks for the reminder. So we'll go back here and put in an estimated cost of $1,000. Save and close. Now it's happy. We don't have any. Remember, we put in the item, so it's available to do things with, but we don't have any yet. So we are going to go order one. I'm going to pick a vendor that I haven't picked in a while, and we'll do Richards. Looks like I don't have an address for Richards. I definitely haven't used them in a while. I'm going to pick a future date, 02/02 of 2022. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is I want to be able to find it easily when we're done here. So I'm giving it a future date. Now we'll go find the item. There's the item that we created earlier, WIP test, and it's $1,000. All right, so now we have one on order. And as we know, we can assign this to a job and even a work order if we wanted to. And if we did, it would become a reimbursable item. But we're not going to do any of that right now. Just didn't want you to think I forgot. WIP test will be our memo. Save and close. Now, as we know, the balance sheet and the income statement have not been affected. The accounting system has not been affected because it's simply a purchase order. We have authorized the purchase of it, but we don't have it yet. Let's pretend like this item was delivered to us and somebody signed for it and it was dropped off. We should have a packing slip, and that packing slip needs to be the responsibility of somebody within your company. When the packing slip lands on that person's desk, their job is to click vendors and go to receive items. And that might as well say enter a packing slip. It might as well say that. And of course, Control R is the shortcut to do this if you're a shortcut person. Now, on the packing slip, I can see the vendor's name, so I go pick that vendor. And the vendor will be there. It has to be there because we couldn't have created a PO without it. So I'm going to go find Richards. And it says, hey, you got a PO for Richards. Do you want to receive against it? And I do. Now the PO form opens up. And I select the purchase order. Now, in this case, it's easy because I only have one, but in the real world, you might have a lot of them. And that's where the memo really comes in handy. Otherwise, you might have to go search through the PO list. Most packing slips, though, have a PO number. Most vendors will ask you for a PO number, and most vendors will ask you, are PO numbers required? And that way, they will always ask you for a PO. Their software won't accept orders without POs. So be sure to talk to your vendor and see if that's an option. We'll check the box, click OK. Now, this item receipt form needs to match the packing slip. Oftentimes, we don't know the price. In a small company, you might. But oftentimes we don't know the price. And oftentimes it is not on that packing slip. And that's okay, because it doesn't really matter. We haven't entered the bill yet. And the person who enters the bill needs to know that for sure. The packing slip should have some kind of reference number on it. Put that number here. The memo from the purchase order copied over to the item receipt. If you want to add to it, you can. Maybe you say order complete. And if your company has developed stages for the ordering receiving process, then you can change that stage here if you'd like to. We are going to need a serial number. Keep in mind, we are about to take possession of this item, and it is now ours, and we're accepting financial responsibility for the item. It will appear on our balance sheet. So we are about to increase the inventory account. So for extra credit, we're debiting the account, right? Debit makes it go up. It's going to go up by $1,000. So in order to do all that, we have to make this thing official. We have to have a serial number. So we are going to enter the serial number from the packing slip. Now, if the packing slip doesn't have the serial number, you're going to need to get it. You could type in unknown and go back and fix it later. But if anyone else has typed in unknown, it won't accept that. It'll say you have to have a unique serial number, at least for this vendor. I highly recommend you take the time to go find the serial number because it gets messy trying to go correct it. And I'm not going to show you how here because that's a different topic. But I highly recommend getting a serial number. Now, it's been my experience, the packing slip always has the serial number on it, so it shouldn't be a problem. And if it's not on there, you have to go to your vendor. Remember, you're the customer. It's your money. Go to your vendor and say, look, you have to put serial numbers on these packing slips. Oftentimes, serialized equipment has stickers that are reusable, and you can peel the serial number off the box and put it on the packing slip if needed. Click OK. Now, with just one mouse click, we're about to update our accounting system. But before I do that, I thought I would introduce you to a new button that many of you haven't seen before. You'll only see the button when you turn the feature on. Now what we can do is we can reserve this item for a customer. Now, of course, we all know that I can go pick a customer here, and I'll find one. Let's say it's Weaver Property Management Boardwalk. And if I have any work orders, I can pick one, and here's one here. I'll just pick it for the heck of it. I need to double check my department because it took the department from the work order. And I might say, that's not the right department. It's commercial, not maintenance, it's commercial replacement. So I have told the software, this item is for that customer. I further told the software, by the way, it's for this work order. And how does that help? It just associates the item with the work order so that the person doing the work order knows they're supposed to take this equipment with them, or they have some responsibility. And I might put in some additional notes about their responsibility. I might say, you need to take this equipment with you, something to that effect. You're going to need a trailer. And that becomes a reimbursable. And if you remember, we have a feature called reimbursables. When you create an invoice and you try to save it, it says to you, you have reimbursables. And you go to the reimbursable form, and there's a list of items, and this item will be on it. However, this reservation feature takes that step one further, takes that process one step further. It allows you to actually reserve the item as if you went and put a sign on it and said, James sold this, don't touch it. Because right now, even though we've picked the customer job right here, somebody could still sell this item. It's still available to sell. And I might have quoted the customer a price already based on the cost of $1,000. Remember, that cost could be a special great deal that I got. And it's important that I sell this item to this customer. So it'd be nice to be able to reserve it, put a sign on it that says, don't sell this to anybody. And that's what this feature does. It also reserves the specific serial number, which means it reserves that cost, which again could be a special cost. Sometimes you go to your supplier and you say, look, I really need your help on this. I have this government job, this city job, this other job, the angry lady job. You remember all that trouble we had with equipment under warranty? Yeah, that's her. I need help. I need better pricing. And they may give it to you. And you want to make sure that you reserve those items specifically for that customer. So we will click the Reserve Items button. And you notice how it filled it out for us. Remember, we talked about the flow earlier. There's usually a harder way and an easier way in Total Office Manager. Now I'm going to change the date. It keeps going to that date because I'm in a special database that does that. Normally it'd be today's date. The customer's already been picked. The department wasn't picked for us because it could have multiple items on it. So that wasn't picked. We'll go ahead and pick it. It's not highly important at this point, the department. Where it really matters is on the invoice, but I'm going to do it anyway, replacement. You can change the number if you want, but that means that there's been 6 others, apparently. What warehouse are we reserving this from? It's this one. So it picked it automatically. The default warehouse selection up here simply fills in all the warehouses on all the items. It's already been picked for us. So in other words, if we had 10 of them, we would change the default to change all 10 of them. Now, there's really nothing else to do here except maybe type in a memo. I'm a huge memo fan. In this case, you might think, what could I possibly type in? And I might type in something like special pricing just for them. That way, if somebody wants to know, why did he reserve this? Now we have a note. It's possible that you don't have these items in the correct warehouse. And we do have a button here to adjust the inventory part, the quantities, the warehouse, etc. We do have a button to do that, but I'm not going to get into that at the moment. But what that is for is if you see something wrong with some of these items, you have a shortcut to make adjustments to the item. I'm ready to hit save and close. And we've now reserved the item. Now, before I hit save and close on this form, I wanted to pause and see if anyone had any questions about anything we've talked about so far. Okay. All right, I'm going to hit save and close. Now, I want to talk about the accounting for a minute so we understand the accounting. The average bookkeeper doesn't need to know this. If your job is to enter packing slips, and your job might include taking advantage of the item reservation opportunity, you probably don't need to know any of this. If you're a full charge bookkeeper, controller, accountant, you will want to know this. So it's extra credit. If you don't need to know it, this is just extra credit. But I want to be sure we cover it. Let's talk about the debits and the credits for a moment so we understand how that works. Let's go to banking and go to the general journal. This is where we see in the software all the debits and credits that have been taking place. And I'm going to narrow down the date to 02/03/2022 to 02/03/2022. And that should find our item receipt. And it did. And you notice it also found the item reservation. So not only did the item receipt affect our accounting, which we expected, but the item receipt affected our accounting as well. And let's look at what happened. The chart of accounts account called accounts payable. So remember, these are from your chart of accounts. On our chart of accounts, we have something called accounts payable. Sure you're aware of it, and that shows up on our balance sheet. Accounts payable is money you owe the vendor. And we credited that account. So we made it go up. So now we owe that vendor $1,000. We credited that account. And the vendor balance is now $1,000. For extra credit, by the way, cleared means, did it clear the bank? What date did it clear? It hasn't cleared the bank yet. We haven't done a bank rec. On the next line, it's inventory. So again, on our chart of accounts, we have an asset, an other current asset called inventory. And on this date, an item receipt caused that account to be debited by $1,000. And debits make assets go up. So our assets went up 1,000 and our accounts payable went up 1,000. Now on our chart of accounts, we have an account called work in progress. It's an asset account. We debited that asset account, meaning it went up $1,000. But you can't just create $1,000 out of thin air. So the other side of the transaction was the inventory chart of account, the same one that was up here, by the way. It was credited by $1,000. So what did we do? We put 1,000 into inventory and we took it right out. We took it out immediately took it out because it's on reserve. So we don't really have it anymore. Sure, it's in the system, as we'll see, it's in there, but we really don't want to consider that we have it anymore. And we don't even want to consider it an asset anymore either, because it's an asset to the customer. Hopefully they feel like it's an asset, right? But it's no longer our asset because it's been held or reserved for the customer, for the job. So that's the accounting behind it. Are there any questions on that part? Now the good news is this is a video, so you can play this back and go, what? I didn't get this. Why did they do that? Now, you might have some why questions. You know, why would we do that? Why didn't we also do something else? And hopefully I'll clear that up as we continue. But I wanted you to know that. Now, this is the difference between being a full charge bookkeeper and a bookkeeper. And there's nothing wrong with being a bookkeeper. I didn't use the word or phrase just a bookkeeper because there are people that do bookkeeping that do not need to know this. There's just no need for it. But if you are a bookkeeper who wants to go to the next level, then you can do that by understanding all the credits and debits behind the scenes. And one big advantage to understanding the debits and credits is that you begin to really understand how the accounting system is affected, how the reports are affected by everything everybody does in the software. And that means you can troubleshoot problems very quickly. So tech support gets a lot of calls from bookkeepers, and understandably, they have questions about why reports look the way they do. And it can be really hard for them to unwind problems that were created. But there are full charge bookkeepers out there. And by the way, some full charge bookkeepers know more than degreed accountants. I promise you that. There's full charge bookkeepers out there that don't call because when a report does not look the way they had anticipated it looking, they know why. Because they understand how transactions affect financial reports. So it's really good knowledge to have a full understanding of chart of accounts and the debits and credits behind them. All right, that's it. I promise that's about it for the accounting. Now we'll get into how these things are used. On a real job, we typically have more than one item that gets reserved, and typically they get reserved many different days. So we still haven't taken receipt of many other items that we might want to reserve. And remember, we're not reserving just a serialized item like a furnace or a water heater. We are also capable of reserving any type of items that are inventory parts or serialized. Now, people often ask, why can't I reserve non-inventory parts? We don't like doing inventory. So most of our parts are non-inventory. Why can't we reserve that? Well, remember, non-inventory by definition, not just Aptora's definition, but accounting, any accounting book, by definition, that's an inventory part that doesn't exist, right? It's non-inventory. You don't have it. It's not in stock. At first, people have a hard time with that. They're saying, well, sure, we have plenty of those. We just don't want to count them. But that means they're not on your balance sheet. So you really don't have them. And you're not really supposed to. Now, there's a lot of caveats to the tax code, but here in the United States, with the IRS anyway, you don't have that. And if you do, you need to change your accounting method, because a non-inventory part means that you don't have any of them. But if you routinely have those in stock, then your accounting really isn't accurate. That means your job costing is not accurate. Your income statement's not accurate. Think of it this way. If you and I walked through your building and examined every nook and cranny and did the same thing with every vehicle, and we totaled up all the value of all your non-inventory parts, whatever that number is, let's pretend like that number is $10,000. That's how inaccurate your reports are. So you have $10,000 worth of non-inventory parts, your cost. Your reports are off by $10,000 at least. That's just one place they could be wrong. That means if your general ledger, the journal, is off, that means the income statement and the balance sheet are wrong. And what feeds from those? Job costing, so that's wrong. Sales commissions are calculated from all those things. If you do that, they're wrong. Everything's wrong. Now, that's acceptable if that's what you do and you know that and everybody's aware of that. That's acceptable. But a lot of people don't realize the impact of a non-inventory part. So that's why you can't reserve a non-inventory part, because it doesn't exist. You don't have one. You can reserve an inventory part and you can reserve a serialized item. What do we do with it? It's on reserve. Let's create an invoice. And we'll date that invoice. First things first, get that thing dated. We're going to need a due date. And why is there no due date? Well, we don't have a customer picked. So we've got to go find that customer. And now the due date got populated. Same day. Well, obviously their terms are set up okay. Had a little background noise there. Got that fixed. All right, so their terms were set up as due on receipt, apparently. We could have set up terms for a month and it would have pre-populated. That's a common question we get. Department, the demand service, that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Well, that's the default for that customer. So we'll go fix that. Placements. Diagnostic fee, that was added automatically because it's an option on that part. We don't want that on there. Now I'll go find the WIP, and there it is. And I can add other items. And remember, one way to add items is to go to lookup, find what you're looking for, find something else, maybe change the quantity. All right, but I don't want to do that, at least on that item. I don't want to do that because I have items on reserve and I want to use those. So I'm going to go to menu and go to item reservation. And it shows me the items that have been reserved for this customer. And there's only one, because that's the only one we created. Now remember, this is a little different than the reimbursables form. The reimbursables form just tells you what items need to go on this invoice, but it didn't actually reserve the specific item. It just tells you basically, don't forget to pick an item. And it would drop a serialized item on here, but you'd still have to pick the serial number. So we're going to check that box, and it says that Ashley reserved it. That's handy to know. So now we know who to talk to if we have questions. The quantity reserved was 1. Quantity used, we haven't used any, is 0. The quantity that we want is 1. It populated that automatically. We know the cost and the serial number. And we click OK. I noticed that when I dropped these 3 items on here, it picked warehouse truck 1. That's a common question in tech support. Where did that come from? I have a feature turned on that automatically picks the warehouse assigned to the user who's logged in at the moment. And I'm logged in as Ashley Adams. And she's assigned to truck number 1. And it automatically uses her warehouse. A lot of people call about that. So we'll change it. And now I'm going to sell this item to this person, just like I normally would. But I have the advantage of knowing that it's the exact same item that I intended to sell the person. Are there any questions on any of this so far? Nope, that's good. All right. Could be good, could be bad. Everybody could be asleep or left or what. Save and close. This customer has unused reimbursables. Would you like to use these now? Let's go ahead and say yes, just so we cover this. This form pops up and it sees things that we have bought for this job. Now, one of which is the reserved item. And how'd that happen? Well, that little box got checked, reimbursable, and it landed on this reimbursable form. And apparently, at some point in the past, not during this training session, but somebody purchased this item up here for this particular job. So I might say, well, I want that one. Glad you reminded me of that. I forgot, is your thought. So you might want it. But you don't need this one because we already took care of that. So you'll want to check the hide button. It's important to know that the reimbursables form in and itself doesn't have any accounting behind it. So it doesn't affect your accounting. It's a reminder slip. It's no different than if you put a Post-it note on your computer screen that said, don't forget to charge Boardwalk for item ABC and 1, 2, 3. Just like a Post-it note, just a reminder. But maybe you need to throw that Post-it note away. The Post-it note said, don't forget to charge them for the whip test item. And you did. And now you want to throw that away. In order to throw that reminder slip away, you just check the hide box. And we hit save. And it won't be there anymore. So the next time you come into Boardwalk, reimbursables, it won't be there. Once you click hide, it's gone forever. But remember, it was just a reminder. You haven't affected accounting, the PO, nothing. You just got rid of a Post-it note, basically. Now, if we hit save and close, it should be happy. Let's see. You sold this customer serialized inventory. Would you like to add that to their equipment list? Well, yeah, I sure would. Nice of you to ask. This form opens just in case you want to do something with it. You can just hit the X if you want. You can highlight and hit edit because there could be many, or you could highlight and just hit enter or double click on it. And now you can see how it added it. It would have put the manufacturer in here if you had set it up with a manufacturer. We didn't. We can go pick the type, say generator. The model number is the item number. The serial number is the one we picked. And the warranty information came from the item setup. Happens to be 1 year, and you can change that. The equipment location could be handy. This could be in the basement, south side, could be on the second floor, could be on the roof, southeast side. If it was a rooftop unit, oftentimes we number those. Maybe the generator there's multiple generators perhaps, and we might number the generator, so we can type that in here. Under menu, we could add notes. We could add an image. We could add documents, such as a manual, schematic diagrams. By the way, the documents don't have to be just documents. You could add additional pictures, photos that you took. From here, we can create work orders, or we have shortcuts to customer information. And we have, of course, user-defined fields. We'll just hit save and close, and the equipment is now under their history. Before I do that, I should say one more thing. As long as we're in here, parent equipment, you could create a parent, and this could become a child of the parent. So the parent could be backup generator systems, and the child could be generator number 1, generator number 2, generator number 3. So the description, we might change it to generator number 01. And then it could be put under an umbrella, if you will, called backup generators. The security industry loves this feature because they will create camera system 1, and they may have 10 cameras under it. Camera system 2, 10 more cameras. The HVAC industry loves it because they might create comfort system, first floor, comfort system, second floor, and put all the equipment underneath it. And it's very handy for commercial too. And as long as we're here, let's just talk about the watch list real quick. If you want to put this equipment on a watch list, like you're concerned about it, it has problems, this is new equipment, hopefully we won't have any, you could put this on the watch list. And then you can filter the customer equipment lists by watch list items. Our mobile software will also give you a red alert saying this is on a watch list. And maybe the watch list is it's brand new equipment. Keep your eye on it. Let's make sure it's working. Or the watch list could be this is old equipment. I'm concerned about the heat exchanger. So that's it. It's done. We reserved it and sold it. Very quickly, we'll just cover some of the other areas where you might see this feature. When you enter the bill, we did an item receipt, you might remember. When you enter a bill, you could have then reserved the items. So it could have been the responsibility of the person entering the bill. Maybe you used a credit card to buy that item. When you enter a credit card charge, you have the opportunity to reserve the item here. Of course, we already know that receive items gave us the opportunity. What about the purchase order? When you're in the purchase order, how come you can't reserve the item? Well, for extra credit, you don't have it yet. Can't reserve what you don't have. That's a common question. Where's the item reservation button? But remember, when you do create the PO, if you're ready to do it, from here you can go right into creating the item receipt. And then you can reserve it. And that's handy because some people play catch up. They enter the PO at the same time they create the item receipt. It's not supposed to work that way, but they do that. A lot of people skip the item receipt and they go right to entering a bill. If you do that, and I don't recommend that, by the way, that should be really rare. But if you do that, use the receive items and enter bill. Use that feature, because what that does is that receives the items and enters the bill all at the same time. But really what you should do is you should create purchase orders and order things. And then when they come in, you should do a receive item. And then when the bill comes, you should do enter bill for received items. You'll be offered a list of all the things that you've received. Check this list carefully, because it's possible somebody forgot to create the bill from the item receipt. You could have item receipts left over from the past. And that's not good, because that means your financials are being double charged. So you should not see things in here that have already been paid for. Now, we got a lot of items in here. Might be hard to find what we're looking for. That's why those. So we're looking through here for Richards, and we might sort it to make it easier. There's Richards. Click OK. Are you sure? What it's going to do is it's going to convert the item receipt to a bill. The item receipt disappears. And there it is. Let's open it. And there's our bill that we created from the item receipt. Now it's important to get the price right. They might have overcharged us. Remember, we got special pricing on this. At least that's the story we told each other, right? We got special pricing. They might have charged us the normal $1,300. This is where we double check the bill against the bill we're entering. The bill they sent us against the bill we're entering. And you could you could reserve the items here if you hadn't done it already. You also have the ability to reserve items when you create work orders. Here are the items that you add to your work order. If there's items that have been reserved, then you can use this button to go find them and have them added to the work order. And remember, when you create an invoice, you have the option of adding all the work order items to that invoice. At that point, you don't have to use the reserve item on the invoice because you've already done it on the work order, and they will automatically carry over to the invoice when you create an invoice from a work order. Either way, the correct item finds its way to that invoice. Any questions on any of that? All right, so one final word on the accounting part is if we go back to the general journal, and let's just do that. I did promise you I wouldn't do this, didn't I? Sorry. I just love accounting so much, so I just can't help it. When I was in school, high school, I thought accounting was horrible. I took an accounting class. I got a bad grade in it. I don't remember the grade. I passed it, but I got a poor grade. I just hated accounting. I love it now because accounting is black and white. There's solid rules for everything. So if I go back to my general journal, I can see that accounts payable and inventory were affected with that item receipt. And if I expand my dates a little bit to bring in the invoice, I can see the rest of the transaction. So if you ever want to know how your accounting was affected, this is the place to do it. Come to the general journal and you'll be able to see how everything was affected. And remember, the advantage to that is you will understand how things happen to the software. You won't have to rely on us, tech support. We're here to help you, of course, but this will allow you to hardly ever call. Most important thing that I can tell people who say to me, look, I struggle with the software, it's stressful, it's a lot of work, it's hard to use, the reports are all messed up. The most important thing I can say to people like that is when you understand all the credits and debits, the chart of accounts, and we've talked about those in other videos thoroughly. When you understand those, it's really easy to figure out if the software has a bug or was there a bookkeeping issue, a data entry issue. Now I'll leave you with one final tip. You notice how I got to this invoice from the general journal. I double clicked on the invoice line item. Maybe I was looking at that line item and I didn't like what I saw. Where was that general journal? Remember, you can go to window, find what you were looking at. So maybe I was looking at these numbers and I didn't like what I saw. 1907.94, how did that get there? I double clicked and I got to the invoice. Now I can look at the invoice, but one more tip. If you go to menu, there is a find in GJ, and now you'll be able to see the impact that this invoice had on your financials. And by that, I mean every account from your chart of accounts. So these are all your chart of accounts right there. This is the account type, the date that it affected it, the transaction type, invoice, the debit, the credit, what happened to the vendor balance. Has it cleared the bank account yet? Date cleared, the department affected. Was a payroll item involved? Like a sales commission. And if you know credits and debits, if you understand the chart of accounts, if you understand the account types and what debits and credits do, you've got all your answers. You're in charge of your own destiny. Believe me, it seems a little boring, but if you have an interest in reducing stress, the boss is always asking you, why did these reports look the way they look? Why is this all messed up? How come the job costing is not right? This isn't right. And it's stressful to try to figure all that out. You're like, I don't know. Software's got bugs. Knowing this will give you so much clarity. It'll reduce the stress in your life so much. And who knows, maybe you'll find a bug and bring it to our attention, we'll fix it. But usually it's just data entry. It's not understanding item types, what the item types do, how do they affect the accounting, the accounts that were selected, how they were used in the software. It's usually that. Okay, that wraps up item reservations. Before I close out this video, are there any final questions from anyone?
James, I have a question.
Oh, yes, huh?
I think I'd like to see, isn't there a report that people can run to show what's gone into item reservations and what's come out of item reservations?
Oh, yes. Glad you brought that up. I should have thought of that myself. So under reports, we have two main reports that you would want to look at. You would go to company items, and under here, we got a lot of them, don't we? Under here, we have item reservations, and these are the two main reports. This will show you reservation activity by the customer or the job, and this would show you reservation activity by the item. There are other reports that would also help you. One of which I want to point out is accounting, general ledger. So this is like reports that affect the general ledger. The general ledger is the main system, the main list of everything that's happened. Under here, we have transaction details by account. And you can pick the work in progress item or chart of account. Let me correct myself. I said item. I don't want to be misunderstood. I meant to say chart of account item, work in progress, and then your date range. And this report will show you all activity under work in progress, which will certainly include item reservations. And that'll include everything. You'll know everything that happened. So 2 reports specifically for item reservations. And then don't forget the transaction detail by account is a handy report. It allows you to see everything that happened under any chart of account. So you pick any chart of account and you know exactly what happened. Did you have a follow-up to that? All right, let's look at the help topic, just to remind you. If you go to support.aptora.com and you search item reservations, you'll see a pretty good help topic here. And if you want to print it, the help topics have that PDF button. Just hit it, and it'll give you more of a PDF-friendly type of option. And you can print it there. Final questions, last call. All right, so now you have the information you need to be an item reservation master, which will make you a master bookkeeper and take you to the next level. And it'll also offer your company the opportunity to get the next level of accounting information. And remember, accounting is the basis of business decisions. It's well worth your time. Thank you, everybody.